Hello and welcome to Getting Social with NPHW, or National Public Health Week. I first want to start by thanking everyone for their patience and understanding as we work out some technical difficulties on our first go-around. As a marathon runner, I really broke the cardinal rule of marathon running by using brand new equipment on race day. And as a result, I've got a couple new bullet points to add to our Google Hangout protocols, especially on default settings for microphones. So if anybody wants to know more about Hangouts or all the things that can possibly go wrong, I am definitely your guy. Going to start out with a little bit about National Public Health Week before we get going here. During the first full week of April each year, APHA brings together communities across the United States to observe National Public Health Week as a time to recognize the contributions of public health and highlight issues that are important to improving our nation. For over 20 years now, APHA has served as the organizer of NPHW. This year, NPHW is going to be happening April 4th through 10th, and this year we are rallying around the goal of making the U.S. the healthiest nation in one generation by 2030. So about today's presentation, I'll tell you a few tidbits about myself, give you some of the highlights of NPHW. Then our big focus will be the Twitter chat. And then I'll dive into some how-to tips for navigating NPHW or any awareness week for that matter. These are really kind of hopefully be some evergreen tips for you. Some of this is going to be a little bit basic, but I promise you there will be plenty for those in the walking or even the running phase of social media. So about me. I've been working in the online marketing world since probably the Korea-Japan World Cup, and the majority of that time has been in the private sector. When I started with APHA, my first thought was, wait, we just need to tell people stuff, not actually sell anything? This is going to be pretty easy. But 4 years later on, I'm looking back on how easy it was to just sell cross sticks or soccer cleats, compared to educating people about how the environment plays a major role in your weight, or the impacts of racism on health outcomes. But what I'm really enjoying these days is learning everything I can about public health, which is why you can find me just about any policy briefing or panel discussion around DC, especially ones that offer a free lunch. I'm also really digging the chance to share my knowledge with presentations such as this, our social media lab at the annual meeting, where a few of the presentations I've done there. And I also really invite anybody to reach out to me on Twitter or email or phone or however you're able to find me. Answering your questions are always a very welcome distraction from spreadsheets or query building or whatever else I've got going on. So I'm going to start off with just a few of the highlighted National Public Health Week events. On Monday, we have our forum, which is going to be How Does the Healthiest Nation Look in 2030? That's going to be great. It's also going to be webcast, and our president, Kamara Jones, is going to be one of the speakers there. So she's always very dynamic, and should be definitely a good show. Tuesday is part 2 of APHA's lead webinar series, and that's going to be Public Health's Legal Authority in safe drinking water. And also, I want to point out that part 1 is actually next week on the 16th. And then Wednesday is the big behemoth National Public Health Week Twitter chat, and we'll definitely be mentioning more on that as we go along. And Friday is the NPHW Student Day, which will include a very cool online event with students and the Surgeon General. Be on the lookout for more info on that, especially for you students. And we'll be adding to this as we go along. And I also invite you to get on the NPHW calendar yourself. I just saw a tweet from my friends down in Mississippi at the Mississippi Public Health Association, and they are definitely doing very well in terms of the amount of events that they've got scheduled. So definitely take a look there. And before I really get into my flow, another thing I want to point out is the National Public Health Week Toolkit. It's really a great resource for building your message and coordinating with the broader NPHW theme. The toolkit also has dozens of pages on planning your event, media outreach, writing letters to the editor, and my personal favorite section, sample social media posts. And for you social media metrics fans, one of the things we did this year was add some Google Analytics tracking codes. So I should be able to see how well you guys as partners are contributing to NPHW traffic. So kind of getting into things here. Before I get too far into there, one of the things I do want to mention is take NPHW as an excuse to do some spring cleaning on your account. And what I mean here is, read your bio. Does it still reflect what you do, or is it some default language your intern created, threw in there when the account was first created a couple of years ago? Also, look at your account from a different angle. One of the things we realized here at APHA was that our background images weren't up to all of our branding standards. Some of them were overlapping with the profile picture themselves. And one of the reasons that kind of creeps up on a lot of organizations is if you're using Hootsuite, or if you're cross-posting from Twitter to Facebook or vice versa, you may not always be looking at your account in the same way that, say, an average person is, who comes into the platform by just clicking on your profile link. So make sure you're kind of checking in on that. Also, the platforms change things all the time. If you haven't been on LinkedIn in even a couple of weeks, they've done kind of a major facelift, especially to their groups and their profiles. So I definitely always suggest kind of taking a different route to log in every once in a while, especially when you're used to a routine. Another easy prep is to write a blog post or have a landing page about National Public Health Week. And what that allows you to do is temporarily update the links in your bios so that they have a National Public Health Week theme. You can also pin a tweet to the top of your Twitter profile that is specific to National Public Health Week. And that's a few quick and easy ways and kind of things you might want to think about doing just kind of on a regular basis as well. Another big prep I always mention to people, no matter what they're prepping for, is creating an editorial calendar. And I'm still on the toolkit slide. I know that we're actually missing one here. So there are many examples out there. If you just Google social media calendar, having a plan will really help you pull resources together before the week starts. And going back to my marathon reference, you don't want to go out too fast and fizzle at the end. And what I mean there is, if you've got 7 or 8 tweets or posts that you've already kind of come up with, having that calendar will help you stretch those across the week instead of posting them all on Monday and Tuesday and sitting there on Wednesday in the full kind of, you've got an event happening in 30 minutes and you're wondering what to post. You're worried about not being able to get back to it for another couple of days. This kind of alleviates that issue there. So then I want to jump into kind of here's step 1 or step 2 in getting ready for National Public Health Week. And that's following APHA and NPHW on any and all platforms that we're out there on. We've got a great social media page on apha.org. And also we do a pretty good job of posting all these on the NPHW site as well. I'm just going to hit kind of a few of the highlight, the big ones that are the most active, especially during National Public Health Week. And also kind of step two is, as you're following these accounts, please kind of take your time to, help amplify our message by retweeting or liking or sharing any of these, any of our posts. So we have the main National Public Health Week account on Twitter. APHA's main Twitter account is @PublicHealth. One that not everybody may know about, or the others two, are the Nation's Health and are in the AJPH, American Journal of Public Health. Both have accounts as well. And those are great ones if you're looking for content to share. They are constantly posting the stories that they are producing with some added context to it as well. So I highly suggest looking, following those two to find content. On Facebook, we have the main American Public Health Association, and that's where we post all of our National Public Health Week stuff to as well on Facebook. And then also the journal has a presence there as well. That's pretty strong. And again, another place to get great content from. Then I would be remiss if I didn't mention these two. And that's the APHA Storify page and Public Health Newswire. APHA Storify page, this is where we aggregate a lot of the social media and links into kind of, Storify is an area where you can really kind of pull together links and social media posts and kind of create your own story, hence the name Storify. That's going to be a great one if you ever miss an event, or if you're wondering what's been happening in the week, or you create your own Storify. Definitely invite you guys to do that. Definitely one to look into. Then Public Health Newswire is APHA's kind of de facto blog. That's going to be a great source of content as well. So jumping into the Twitter chat. So the beast that is NPHW Chat. Last year we had over 1,300 participants, and they put out nearly 5,000 tweets in the span of just over an hour or so. And just much like my 18-month-old son, it just keeps getting bigger and faster as we go along. So taking a few of these tips to heart can actually make this very manageable and actually pretty exciting. So who joins the NPHW Chat? The answer is nearly anyone, and especially anyone with the link to public health. We've got everyone from the Surgeon General and the usual suspects of government agencies like HHS and CDC. There's also Let's Move. The First Lady has jumped in a few instances. Plus plenty of businesses, including Snap Fitness, Aetna, even Morgan Stanley. And then in addition to all that, our members and state and local health entities, plus a whole bunch of just people and professionals who care about public health. So this is really a big tent. Everybody's welcome. Don't be intimidated. Just join in sort of event. So how does it work? Well, it can really almost be boiled down to @NPHW is going to ask a question and participants respond on Twitter. Both the question and the answers are on Twitter. So that's kind of the basic of it. But is it really that simple? Kind of not. There's a few things to know. So hopefully it's looking a little blurry on my screen, but hopefully not so much on yours. But so here's an example of a question from last year. How can students in schools prepare to lead the next generation of public health? And kind of looking at the Surgeon General's answer here, the anatomy of it is that he starts off with A5. And that lets everybody else in the chat know that he's answering question 5. So NPHW uses Q5, people answering use A5. He gives his answer, and then he also makes sure is including the MPHW Chat hashtag. And that's what really brings the whole chat together and lets other people see your tweet along with everybody else who's answering the questions within the chat. Without the hashtag, you're just kind of talking into space and kind of talking on your own. So if you do forget it, it kind of actually is probably a good idea to maybe delete it and repost with the hashtag, or just repost with the hashtag. It's kind of that important. Then you'll also see that some people included other hashtags in there as well. And I also invite you guys to include links or images in your tweets as well. But just don't go crazy. A good rule of thumb in any Twitter post is you don't want more than 1 or 2 blue things out there. You don't want a blue monster. And what that refers to is how hashtags and links and even mentions all become hyperlinks. So kind of take it easy on those. You don't want people getting confused. You also want them focused on the one thing that you actually do want them to click on, whether it be the hashtag or the link. So a few more kind of tips and tricks that I make sure to mention to everybody. The first one is top versus live. When you first, so the way you find the chat is you just go onto Twitter, you type in hashtag NPHW Chat into the search box, and that's going to bring up a search results page. And when you first come up there, it's going to be, the default is top. And that's going to show you posts from, say, at NPHW, at Public Health, Surgeon General, and other people that have gotten a lot of likes or retweets, or they are a verified account, or they have a lot of followers. What you probably want to be clicking on is live, and that's the live stream of what's happening right now. Whereas the other ones are a bit more, work more on algorithm and could be a little stale, where you're not seeing things happening in real time. Another thing is engage with other people on the chat itself. Don't be afraid to talk amongst yourselves. If somebody gave a really good answer to question 2, don't be worried about question 3, or you can listen to question 3, but don't be afraid to start kind of a side conversation with that other person and ask them for more details, or the link to the story, the article they're referring to, or the case study they mention. It's a great way to make connections within there. Don't feel overwhelmed. Don't feel like you have to answer every single question. There's typically between 7 and 8 questions throughout the chat. You might not feel that all of them are relevant to you. So kind of take it easy. Take it all in. Also remember that we will have a Storify afterwards, and it's also there available to you. The whole feed is there available to you afterwards as well. So if you're not catching things live in real time, it's not like any of it disappears. So you can always go back and check things. And here's kind of a big thing that you can really do, and that's prepare. And what I say by preparing is that we've got our fact sheets on the NPHW site. And so you can see kind of where our topics are probably going to be centered around in terms of the questions. And you can really kind of start to form, pre-form some answers, or even be ready to talk about your topic in general public health terms. What's your elevator pitch when somebody, kind of get that into a tweet form. Then I say save images, pre-shorten your URLs, and then look over the RSVP list and create lists. And kind of what that does is lets you focus on answering the question versus searching for something. I really remember the first Twitter chat I tried to get in on, and I spent probably 5-7 minutes trying to answer question 1 because I was trying to include a link and I was trying to include an image. And I couldn't find the image I wanted, and my internet connection was slow and took forever to get a bit.ly. So from then on out, didn't include those in the following questions, and kind of really felt like I missed. So having those at the handy, at the ready to go, is really going to let you focus on your content versus scrambling. The RSVP list, and that kind of one of the great things about this Twitter chat and other Twitter chats is that it really makes the other participants very approachable. And I'd really like to mention that in regards to some of the larger government agencies and verified accounts that participate, and that it's currently being manned. A lot of times on Twitter, take for instance Sunday morning, and there's all these tweets going out, and you're like, is anybody really working on Sunday morning? No, it's everybody pre-scheduling tweets. There's nobody really kind of at the helm. During a Twitter chat, this is live, which means if you really have a burning question, or if they say something and you want follow-up, or you want to add your 2 cents, or you kind of make yourself heard, this is really kind of one of the best times. It really is almost like a cocktail party in that, they're there. They're somebody you can just kind of go up and shake hands with, almost virtually here. So that's kind of a great reason to participate in not just this Twitter chat, but any. But more so ours, because I don't think anybody brings together as many public health professionals as we do in such a large context. So kind of getting into a few of kind of the more personal type things beyond, NPHW, but very relevant to it. So promoting your event. And I'll kind of try to put it in the context of what APHA does for National Public Health Week as well. One of the things that we do very, very well is outreach. So that means we're constantly going out and contacting the people that we want to participate in, say, the National Public Health Week chat. So that means we go out and we hit them up on the platform itself. So that's direct messages. Finding out who manages those accounts. But then it's also making sure that we're supporting them as well. So if CDC is holding a Twitter chat, if any of these other organizations that we're asking something from them, we're also trying to make sure that we're giving something in return. And also when you do that, it makes, it makes your request a lot more appeasing looks better for you. And they're more willing to kind of participate in what you're doing if you're kind of giving the quid pro quo. Post early, post often. So that means, the earlier you kind of start mentioning what's going to happen, the better. Especially if you're trying to use a unique hashtag for your event. Getting that hashtag populated is really important, and having something in there so it's not just kind of coming out of the blue. Tie your regular posts to the event, and that's kind of almost no-brainer, but putting the work that you do in context to the event, or the event in context to what you do. And that allows you to kind of get more touch points for the event, more mentions of the event. Another thing, make sure you're posting during the event. Take for instance webinars. Kind of the general rule of thumb is, maybe a quarter of the people you invite register, half the people that register actually attend. But what you have there is you had, another 50, the 50% that didn't attend still registered. They're still interested. They still have an interest in what's going on. So that they might not be there in live form, but they're probably maybe looking in on it, or they'll be looking in on it afterwards. So that's why I say after the event can be just as important as well. So making sure that you're kind of giving people a good context of what's going on, and also following up and giving people something to latch onto. For instance, these hangouts that we do, we've done several of them throughout the years, and I might have, looking at it now, not so many people viewing right now, but I can guarantee you when I go back and look at this a month from now, I've probably quadrupled, or even even more so, the number of viewers. Just remember, a lot of people are not, they're busy, but they are hungry for this content. So live tweeting events, and the thing I say here is it's a lot of similar prep work as the Twitter chat. You're going to want to find out what the hashtag is for the event before it happens. So take for instance our forum, it's going to be the NPHW hashtag. But if you're going to somebody else's event, look at the website or look at the tweets that are promoting the event and see if they're using one in there. Look at the list of participants. And I mentioned the RSVP list for the Twitter chat. Same thing goes for live events. Do the speakers have a handle that you can mention? Are they offering tips on what they're going to be presenting about? And making a connection with that presenter as well is always good. I've got a few slides here about images, so I'll just kind of skip that one right ahead for a minute. Tweet ahead of the event. And what that does is allows people who are also going to that event to see that you're going and connect with you. And so you're already making that connection before the event. So you know who to retweet, or you know who to mention. Set the scene, give some background, especially on why you are there. That also usually helps the speakers as well. If they know who's there, who they're talking to, it kind of helps them a bit. and also kind of gives you a few credentials to why people might want to listen to your live tweets as you're going through the event. Be timely throughout the event, kind of be in chronological order. Don't kill yourself, trying to tweet every single word that somebody's tweeting, but make sure it's accurate, and make sure you're also giving credit to the speakers there. Using that hashtag and using their handles is usually pretty good. Or if they're part of an organization, mentioning their name and the organization's handle. It's also a great way to get retweeted by that organization, especially when it's a large organization where they may not have any representation there other than just the speaker. They're always looking for ways to promote their people, and you're giving them the content to do so. Also, be sure to engage with the other participants or the presenters themselves, and take it offline, or even make sure that you're following them on a day-to-day basis, not just during the event. And also, possibly follow them on LinkedIn, or get their email address, or go have coffee if they're in your area, kind of thing, to kind of make that connection more sustainable as well. So kind of one of my things that I've found on a personal basis here, and also from managing accounts, is images during live events can be pretty bad sometimes. So take, for instance, I was at the Global Health Mini University at GW the other week. And as you can see on the left there, that was my seat. I've got just a camera phone. If I had posted that picture, it's not so great. It's kind of just taking up space. You can't tell who's talking. You can't see what the slide is. It doesn't look any different from any other conference room or ballroom you've ever been in. So what I did instead was I went on their website and I just quickly grabbed one of the event images or logos that they had there. And I included that in my tweet. And it looks a lot more professional, looks a lot better. And what it does is it gives you context to where I am, so that you know where I was, and it still allows me to include an image without it looking, all too shoddy. Other instances, other ways of doing that, taking pictures of the signage beforehand. So this one didn't have a free lunch, but it was still a good one anyways. Was a congressional briefing I went to with the ACSM, and again, I'm seated in the back, and I wasn't sure what kind of images I was going to be able to take during the event itself, especially since there was just a small TV inside for slides, and I wasn't sure if they were going to use it or not. So basically, just step back outside, and now you've got a nice picture of the sign, and the halls of Congress and all of that going on. To kind of gives people pretty good context of where I was and what the event was. Then another one I went to was with the Truth Initiative. Surgeon General was talking. All the front seats, again, nicely reserved for a great big group of students. And beforehand, I wasn't sure what images I was going to be able to capture. So what I did was, I knew they were going to be talking about some of the campaigns that they ran, especially the newest ones. So I went on their website and grabbed one of their images from their It's a Trap commercials that they've got going on, which is pretty funny. But it also allowed me to add an image to my tweet. And the reason I'm really harping on these images is because so few people do it. So when you're live tweeting an event, especially one that there's a lot of people at and a lot of people tweeting, and there's just a big block of text, and you include an image, you're going to stand out much, much more so than anybody else. And this is even more important if you're the one hosting the event. So if you're the organization hosting the event, and you can probably I'll go out on a limb and say most of your participants are not going to be using images. So if you are the organization, the host, and you're using the images, your own tweets are really going to stand out amongst the crowd. A couple other live tweeting tips. Turn off your scheduled tweets or any cross-posting you might be doing. So if your Facebook posts get tweeted, turn that off for the time being. Retweet to catch up and kind of keep up. Like I said, you don't need to be posting every single word that people say as it's all going along. It's always great to, also helps you make those connections with the other participants. And a lot of it gives you some breathing space in between. Ask questions. And I say that's a big one. It really, not only gets you sometimes mentioned by the actual presenters during the live event, but it also helps keep the conversation going and kind of promote, usually those get retweeted as well, especially if they're answered or you're mentioned by the presenters if your question is answered. Check back after the event ends. Both of these two are both for participants and even more so for people hosting events. And that means that some people will go home and look over their notes and tweet things out, or they finally get that image that they wanted, to kind of they weren't able to do it during the event. Kind of gives you and also go back and follow the other people that were in the event itself. Then if you hosted the event, archive it with a Storify. We'll be hopefully doing something, some how-to tips on Storify at some point. But it is a pretty simple thing to do. It's a lot of just dragging and dropping and doing some searching, and it's definitely one of those great to send out to, especially to anybody that wasn't able to make the event. And it also gives you a chance to people that you mentioned in your Storify. They get tweets saying that they were mentioned, and it's a great way to kind of recognize people that were great participants in your event. So the next thing I have here is making friends. And I really, I'm super happy that I was able, I was given a few extra days for this event. And I say that because it meant I was able to listen in on the Health Communications Working Group webinar yesterday. And one of the big slides that they had from Vaccinate California was, it was grouping, I think I tweeted it out yesterday, and it was the kind of the cohesiveness of people that were tweeting about the vaccine bill in California. And the thing that really stood out was that the anti-vaccination people and even conservatives or Tea Party folks and others that were almost borderline against the bill, or the ones that were truly against the bill, had a much tighter, tight-knit community amongst themselves. They all followed each other. They all knew exactly what the other was talking, kind of talked with a singular voice versus the public health folks who were all kind of disjointed and didn't follow each other and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely encourage you to really connect with each other and look at the RSVP list, look at who participates in the chat, especially those that you may not think of as being true connections. And then even more so, start following the people that are similar to you. Making sure that you're following that health department in the next county over, or others in your state. Make sure that you're following, if you're reading a journal article and it's a topic that you're really interested in, look that author up. See if they're on social media and see what they're posting. It's a great way to kind of make those connections and have those there. But kind of going to my bulleted list here, one of the first things I have here is, do they even know they are public health? And I always try to mention that a lot of times when people are starting with public health or starting with social media. And that's within National Public Health Week. And I say that, make sure you're fired, look at the other accounts in your community, especially ones that we as public health professionals know have a public health influence, but they themselves may not know that. So does your police department see themselves as part of the public health community? Does the fire department? And they're usually two of the ones that have very large social media followings. And kind of reaching out to them during National Public Health Week to let them know, hey, you're part of the public health community. This is a celebration about all of us. Just to let you know, you're part of this community too, and it's a great way to kind of boost, amplify the National Public Health Week message. I have engage influencers, and that's one, reach out to, make sure that you're following journalists, especially the ones that tweet often or are asking questions on social media. One of the more fun things that's happened to me on social media is the editor of the local running magazine was delayed on the metro here in DC. He did a Facebook post, "I bet I could run faster than the metro. Has anybody ever done it?" I responded, I was like, "Yes, I'm a run commuter. I basically do it every day." He responded, and next thing I know, I was in a race against him, taking the same route via metro, me on foot. I was the cover story. Had a 5-page center spread. So there's definitely a benefit to answering those questions that journalists have and making sure you're following them and seeing what they're working on. And you kind of take in what they post and then what ends up on the 4 o'clock news later that day. Did you see somebody respond and all of a sudden that person is getting interviewed? Kind of take note of that. Next thing I have in here is become an influencer. And what I mean here is, give your followers fodder, give them content, make yourself known as somebody who they can come to for content, and ask them to share and to like and to retweet your content. You can't do that on every single post, but taking that editorial calendar I mentioned at the very beginning, put a star next to a few of those that you want to say email, include in an email that's going to be going, if you have a newsletter, say, hey, we're going to be posting about the event that we're doing on Wednesday. Make sure that you also tweet that out. Or if you have a certain story about a client or a success story that you have, suggest to your kind of network of people that they are also mentioning it on social media. Promote your advocacy efforts. And kind of a little upset with what I kind of have as a bullet point there, because really the gist of that is engage your elected officials. One of the things we see is that anytime we mention vaping or anti-vaccination, we get flooded with accounts kind of saying how horrible we are and all that. So that is also happening to your elected officials anytime they propose kind of bills on those lines. So make sure that they are also saying, the good guys are out there. The good guys have a voice. The good guys can also be loud and, not as obnoxious, but, have just as much influence on social media as well. It's not just these people screaming about that stuff. And kind of what that does, it gets, in kind of putting all that together, it's earned media. It's social media, the only thing it costs you is your time, unless it's Facebook and you got to do a few other, things to get seen. But essentially, a lot of this is going to be, that outreach to journalists that gets you, your event on the 6 o'clock news, or a mention from, a columnist or things like that. That's all going to be, free to you. Also, make sure that you take these online connections offline. Really capitalize on when you do make these connections, and kind of don't have. It really kind of depends on what you're asking them, or that kind of relationship in terms of how you take online to offline. But a lot of times it could be as simple as making sure that your elected officials are invited to events, or that you're kind of even mentioning your offline event efforts online to kind of make that connection between the two of them. And one of the things that we've worked on in the past year at APHA, and even done a few things amongst employees, and that's making this personal. Don't forget your personal account. You might be managing one for the county or the state or your organization, and there's a lot of limitations oftentimes with those. So don't forget, anytime you say, "Oh, I wish we could do this," why don't you do it with your personal account? If you can't participate in advocacy efforts, with your organizational account, do it with your personal one. And in that case, you can get hyper local also. What's happening on your actual street, and kind of skip the next bullet there. Just kind of say, make sure you're telling your friends and family. If your Facebook account is really almost always, pictures of your kids or what you had for lunch that day, take National Public Health Week as a good opportunity to remind those close connections, those family connections, that you are a part of public health. Let them know what public health is and what you do, and why they should also take note of what's going on in public health. I have personalized your advocacy, and what I mean there is that if you are reaching out to elected officials, making sure that you are letting them know that you are a constituent. It's kind of one of their biggest pet peeves is that they don't know when people are yelling at them or asking for things from them on social media, such as to support a certain bill. They don't know if they really need to listen to you or not. And so it's one of those great things that you can talk to any elected official and they still listen to you just as much as anybody else. But if you put in there, take for instance myself, if I put in there, Congressman Delaney, I'm a constituent of MD06 in Germantown. Would love for you to support transportation alternative planning. That's going to go over a lot better than if I just said, make sure you're promoting, make sure you're advocating for Tiger grants. And I didn't say who I was, where I was from, or even why I wanted those. So definitely make sure you're doing that. Also, reach out to the other public health professionals. I mentioned our HCWG webinar yesterday, and those connections, how disjointed they were. And I also made sure, said, make sure you're following people that are similar to you. This is just kind of reiterating that. Reach out to them. Even if you are already connected with them, just go and wish them a happy National Public Health Week and say, thanks for doing what you do. It kind of establishes that connection, and kind of the nerdy side of that is that these social media networks, a lot of them, there's a lot of algorithms behind it all. And even mentioning a certain government agency or using certain hashtags or connecting with certain accounts all plays into that, all plays into how and when you show up to certain people. So just, it's another activity, another piece to the algorithm. I kind of feel like I'm unpersonalizing it, and as I keep talking here, but it's a very altruistic way of kind of feeding the algorithm, so to speak. Then just kind of finishing up here, definitely do make sure you're looking at all of our APHA social media accounts and following along with the National Public Health Week stuff. The big thing, I think our Twitter chat manager or guy would be really upset if I did plug RC Ping for the Twitter chat once again. That's super helpful for us, especially for those of you that are members and affiliates and all those kind of people that we may not have on our list or may not think that you were showing up. Gives us a chance to look out for you, and also gives other people, all of you that are on this or listening in or listening, down the line, definitely take a look at that RCP list. Start connecting with those people. Those are people that have raised their hands and saying, I'm part of public health. And even the ones that may not have that obvious connection to public health, take a look at them and see what their connection is and see how you might be able to connect with them on the Twitter chat or just in general, because they're looking for a public health connection. They're looking to become part of it, and it'd be great to have you guys jump in there and help shepherd them along. So if we have any questions, we have 15 or so minutes here left. I'm not afraid of cutting these things short, but definitely want to open it up and see if anybody has any questions. You can tweet those with the National Public Health Week hashtag, or you can also post them to the Google Plus Hangout page. We're looking at both of those. So I am just going to hit the mute button real quick, just so I can look at those. I did have an offline question via email about the advocacy and mentioning that you're a constituent, and it was our elected officials really paying attention to social media, and as much as say, and what I guess they assume is is it just as much as say advocacy alerts or things like that. I'd say that the Congressional Management Foundation has actually done quite a bit of research on this. They did a big survey to congressional offices last year. If you want to look it up, it's called hashtag Social Congress. There's quite a bit of content there, and what they're really finding out is that it's not taking the place of letters to your congressman, especially personalized letters to the congressman. It's not taking the place of those, but it is supplementing them in almost live, in live time. So if they make an announcement, that they're supporting something, or if they are just coming off the set from C-SPAN or just coming off the floor, they might look onto social media and see how do people react. So it's a bit more of kind of live time reaction versus actual regular influence. Caveat that kind of found to that was that if you get a large enough group of people tweeting at them or mentioning them in a certain context, you might actually be able to influence the way they think. You might not be able to change the way they actually vote, but what you might be able to change is which amendments they might or might not add, or which parts of the bill they are kind of. I guess what I'm getting at there is that you may not be able to change the color of their state, but you might be able to influence how they work with their other members of Congress. So there's definitely an importance to it, especially if it's in reaction to something they have just done. Another thing I want to mention there is just like you would follow the journalists and things like that, saying which ones are active on Twitter or any social media, take a look at your elected officials. Is your congressman there sitting at the airport whenever he's bored posting things? And what that kind of tells you is that he is looking at his account. He is following it. He or she is active on it. And they're carrying their iPhone around and they're getting the alerts when somebody mentions them. Those are the kind of officials you really want to engage with. And even probably more so at the local level, if you know that they are personally managing that account themselves. It's a great way to kind of give yourself probably more influence than the people that aren't there. Anybody can send a letter, but not everybody's on social media. And just as we were mentioning, the anti-vaxxers or the vapors, they are doing these kind of efforts, and it's great when we are able to kind of equal that. Okay, I think that's, we'll stop it here. And I definitely invite anybody to reach out to me personally. It's patrick.benko@apha.org or at patrickbenko on Twitter. I'm managing that account, so you'll be reaching me. And I definitely do welcome any questions. We also have great staff here in the with NPHW, even an intern that so they can be responsive to anything and everything you might wonder, social media and beyond. So thank you so much, everybody, and really appreciate it.